going to be discussing high performance brand building today. So how to generate your own brand strategy, what that looks like, what reflection marketing is, and what the pillars are that Chirag is really well versed in here. So Chirag is a world-renowned performance coach and guest speaker. We're really lucky to have him here today. I'll be dropping some links in the chat as we get going. But feel free to chime in at any time with questions you may have. We want this to be a conversation. So, Chirag, is there anything you want to add before we get started?
No, you're the boss. So I'm here.
All right. Everybody mark our words. That's what he said. So I guess the first thing we want to talk about here is something that Chirag has really honed in on in a course that he's built as well, is basically a 3-pillar strategy for building your brand. So there's an approach which is think, feel, do. And I'm going to let Chirag kind of go into this a little bit more. And then as you have questions, we'll dive into it.
So I'm going to give them my 60-second elevator pitch in sense, because for a lot of these people, I'm a stranger. And the first thing I would be thinking of is, who's this person and why should I listen to them? And so I got my license actually when I was 23 years old back in 2006. I had no idea what I was doing. And so I actively sold real estate for 14 years. I had my own brokerage. I've done keynote speaking. I volunteered for my board of realtors. I've been vice president of MLS. I've chaired a young professionals network. I'm like a real industry lifer. And, you know, my passion has always been filling that gap for agents, right? It's an industry that's filled with what to do and not enough how to do it. So whether, you know, I guess really the first point is whether you realize it or not, all of us are brands. The way that we talk, the way that we engage, what we post online, how we comment online, like, you know, and so I always thought of this as, from an agent's perspective, being very purposeful. So when I think of like brand building and I think about this whole think, feel, do, right? First of all, it's like, who is your ideal client and how are you trying to connect with them? Right. So the example I use is being an agent in Westchester County, which was a suburb outside of New York City. So I would primarily get buyers who were moving out of the city and wanted more space, a yard and school and all that fun stuff that makes you feel good being an agent. So I thought, like, if I'm meeting most of these people and they're all online leads, like, how can I get them to trust me? Right. Because if you think about it, a lot of the times that I found that there were actually women that were doing the searches. And so mind you, they're finding me online, they like my reviews and they're reaching out to me. I'm a stranger that they're taking a train or they're driving to meet, and I'm a man. So like, how can I close that gap? Right. So I always thought of social media as a real way to build trust in advance. And so I always think of this in any content, anything I write, anything I post. Like, what do I want somebody to think, right? Like when they look at the stuff that they look online, what's the conclusion I want them to come to? Then the second one is, how do I want someone to feel, right? What is like the emotional tone of it? Like, is it inspirational? Is it empathy? Like, what am I really trying to connect with someone? And ultimately, what do I want them to do? Right. And if you align those 3 things in anything you do, it's a simple way of thinking through how to align something so it's valuable for another person.
Yeah, I think that you bring up a great point here. You know, it's how do we align it? And another point that I think is really important and we'll continue to touch on here is you are your brand, right? So you've had a lot of great points on this as we've talked about this in passing, but you know, how you interact with the world, what you do on a daily basis, that is your brand. So it's something that people often confuse, thinking that they have to start from scratch. But as we get into this more today, you'll learn that it's actually something that already exists, right?
Well, it exists whether we like it or not, right? If you think about it, there's no such things as 2 first impressions, in that, you know, in a modern world, how you show up, like there's some people, you know, that show up to an office or wherever they are, they're just decked out, right? Like they get dressed up to go to the gym. Like they have like, you know, their outfits put together, their sneakers always match, right? And like, that's their brand. Like if you think about them, it's like, okay, this person's always well put together. That leads to assumptions of them being detail oriented, being organized, and that can carry through into your work in other areas as well.
Right. Yeah. And so I think as we go into this, I mean, you bring up the approach of think, feel, do. And I think that kind of segues into this pretty perfectly as you're talking about, it is how you're appearing, whether you like it or not, right? So what does that mean to you, the think, feel, do approach?
Well, like I'll deconstruct something that I actually know works. So, I have two young kids, and so I was dealing with all these buyers. So, I was very purposeful in what I posted, right? I would post a lot about my family. I'm into, I was in a car accident, which led me to gain like 60 pounds. So I went from being into good shape into being like wildly large, and I felt like obese, and I shared that journey. So I was sharing my family, transformation, personal development. So it's like, what did I want somebody to think? That I care about family, that I'm always trying to better myself. The feeling I was trying to want is just empathy and connection, right? Like
Right.
if you're into exercising, you like other people and exercising, right? For
Right.
example, like you and I had never really ever had a conversation, but our conversation took a different turn. And we both realized that we like going to the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning, right? So
Exactly.
but this is how these things build, right? And then what do I want them to do? What I really wanted them to do is just feel comfortable. Like, and the other part of my brand pillars, and we can get into those pillars and that strategy was community. I was huge into my community. I really believe look, everyone, when they live somewhere, they want to know three things: explore, experience, dine. Like, where do I go? What experiences can I have here? And everything in America is based around food, right? Who doesn't want to
Right.
meet for meal? So when I shared that triangle approach of information, it was very curated, that people would connect with me and they just assumed that I was a good person because I was very involved in my kids' lives, that I cared about myself because I was always posting motivational things that I was going through this journey, and that I knew the area really well because I was interviewing local business owners and stuff like that. And this is stuff that everyone can do. So if you reverse engineer it, it's like, who are your clients? What do they care about? Right.
Right.
And then if you care about those same things, how do you put out information, content, stories, things that you're just naturally doing as part of who you are that build that connection? Because the one thing I remember was when all these millennial people were buying houses from people that were like, would talk to them, like down to them, like they're their kids, walking through an open house, and how uncomfortable the clients looked.
Right. And so I think that's a great point that you're bringing up too. You're mentioning what people, how they look when somebody's just interacting with them on a daily basis, right? So you're talking about, with your children, for example, on a daily basis, they see an involved father, therefore they make assumptions about you, right? But that's basically how you build your brand. It's assumptions, right? Based on how you're presenting in the world.
Yeah. And like, if you go on our coaching thing and you look at our brand, like our brand is, I believe in, people ask all the time, Kennedy, it's like, how do you know coaching is successful? Your life or your business independently could get better by accident, right? Both of those things happen on purpose, right? So, we always believe in this concept of like, live more life, right? Like, we judge our success based on implementation and happiness, right? So you have to implement the things that you're being taught. And if your happiness is the real KPI, because if you're happy, your business and your life are both better. So if you look at like our social page, you can see all those things, the stories, the posts, the conversations, the comments, like what we care about. So, I think for people, the biggest thing, there's like 160 people here. There's like one thing that I would love everyone to walk away with, is just being comfortable with who you are, what you love, and start sharing it with people.
So a question that comes up often on these calls, and something that I think is a challenge for a lot of people, is putting themselves out there. You mentioned get in front of the camera, be who you are, show your personality. A lot of the times we hear pushback about, well, I'm a private person. What do you do when somebody says that? They're like, I'm private, I don't want to share that information about myself. What information should they share? I mean, you can be private and still push content out, right? And show who you are.
All right, good. Now this is my favorite part. We could like get into like the nuts and bolts of how to do something. Well, the two different types of people, right? When people say something are private, there are two types of people, right? Agents, I would say, right? Agents that want to share everything and agents that want to share nothing. And you need to have a plan for both. So if your business is business and all your, like, think about the stigma that agents have, right? That all they care about is commission. They have sayings like commission breath, and all you want to do is like, those things are based on what perception you put out there. So if all you're posting is your listings on platforms called social media, what do people think you care about?
Right. Yeah.
They
It's
think you care about selling a house.
Mhm.
Now, I just rewrote one of my clients' newsletters for like an agent tip in a call this morning, right? And what I said to him was, I was like, look, you talk about social, you do a good job, just repurpose the information, right? And if people don't want to share their personal lives, fine. All of us know there's so many crazy things that happen in the course of a real estate transaction. Like if we all had our own private blog where we could just put entries in and like it's just really anonymous and you like only realtors could get in, it
Right.
would be like reading a comedy skit. But people don't understand what we actually do, right? So that goes to this concept of perceived value versus actualized value. We
Right.
all have a perceived value of what we offer somebody because we know that's what we do. But unless it's communicated and the other person understands it and benefits from it, it's not actualized. So I find social media a great place to do it, right? So if you actually made stories or hired a videographer or docuseries, all the stuff that went into selling a listing or taking a buyer out, no one believes that you do this much work. And that's not on clients, it's on us as a communication method. And you have this free thing called social media in your cell phone where you can actually just document the whole thing. Because whether you like it or not, you have to talk to people to make money in real estate. So you are putting yourself out there.
Right. And you're making a great point too. And this is actually something we talked about at our last session, which is giving to get, right? So you do this a lot, right? I think that in social media now, you can't just post something and expect engagement and expect people to respond, right? You have to engage back. You have to give something if you want something. And so I think that's the same when you're building a brand or trying to separate yourself from a pack of people, right? You have this free tool at your fingertips, like you're talking about your social media, right? But with that, you also need to be engaging back with these people.
It's a conversation.
Right.
And, look, people, what's the quote? No one will care. No one cares like what you said or what you do, but they'll always remember how they made you feel.
Exactly.
Social media. And if you look at how brand building, social, like all this connects to actual sales, look, there's three phases, I would say, of a transaction: before, during, and after. Before and during have been commoditized already by technology, third-party sites, and everything. It's gone. We've lost that battle a long time ago. This whole concept of what happens after someone buys or sells a home with you is the thing that you're worth fighting for and the thing that you should hold on to the most. So when you start talking about brand, like you're saying in social, it's like, what do you do with it? It's the best listening mechanism, right? For everyone out here, if you haven't talked to somebody in a while, like, don't worry. They don't realize that you should have been in touch with them the whole time. Go on. If they're younger, go on Instagram. If they're older, go on Facebook. Find a moment in their life and say, hey, I saw this happened. I hope all is well. Or you can take that same information. You should ideally put it in your CRM, make a note. Every single time you see someone's wedding anniversary, birthday, or something like that, you should send a card, make a note, and then set a reminder, right? And this is how you start building a brand of caring, which is ultimately the one that will get you the most business.
Yeah, that's what you've built your entire brand on, right? Every time you're on a call, you're asking people how they are, you know things about them, right? This is what makes people feel special, included, and want to work with you, right? And this is the same in any business, especially real estate. This is a pivotal moment in a lot of people's lives, right? This is a really big deal for a lot of people, something that they maybe only do once, twice, 3 times, depending on your client. So making sure that you have a really, unique and special connection with them is important when you're working in this space.
So let me ask a question. I'm going to go a little rogue here. Hit yes in the chat if you want to know how to extend the conversation with your clients where they're expecting your call, happy to speak with you. It's easier to engage with them. And it takes the mystery out of like, well, what do I say? How do I follow up? What do I do? And like, because I find this is where people really get stuck, right? And what I realized is no one actually ever told people how to do this. I remember sharing this on a call one time with a client and then being like, whoa. And I'm like, Well, think about it. There's, if you look at relationships, like everyone has this thing called neuroassociation, the way our brain connects one thing to another, right? So at the end of the transaction, it's done, right? When relationships go from defined to undefined, that's when they get weird. So when we're working together, you're calling, emailing, texting every day. That is a relationship. So at like the peak point of the relationship, the clear to close, when like everything is all good, I would just reach out and I would just say something, extend the relationship. I'd say, hey, Kennedy, I just want to thank you for the opportunity of working together and sharing. Insert what you listened to that was blank, blank, and blank, for being the opportunity to help you find a home and learning about your family, your kids, and everything else, right? Now, the next part is they're going to say, oh, Shrag, it's been great learning about you and working out and your family and whatever it is, right? And you're going to say, could I ask you a question? And it's very important if you use these words, would it be okay? I put that in the chat. Would it be okay gives the other person all the control in the conversation. So I'd say, Kennedy, would it be okay if I stayed in touch with you? We share great things that happen in the community. We have client appreciation events. And overall, we just want to make sure that we're able to answer any questions you have and continue to be a resource. And every person says yes, because in somebody's mind, if you call, email, and text somebody, and then you stay in touch with them once a month, it's called a relationship and a friendship, which is what you already have. So if you build that and you piggyback it based on purposeful content, and our course goes into this, how to build a brand, how to shoot the content, and really how to build it in the plan. These things, once they align, really become big momentum builders for people.
Yeah. And Shrag here mentioned his course, which I'll drop in the chat. This is basically a course that helps go a lot deeper into everything we're discussing today. I'll also drop a link in the chat for Luxury Presence as well. So if anyone here wants more information on building their social and website, that information is here. So a strategy session for both of those. So you mentioned something repeatedly, and I think a question that a lot of people have here is, how are they attracting their ideal customer? What does that look like? How do you do that? Right? So it's one thing to brand yourself, but what if you want to attract a specific person? How do you go about that, Shrag?
Well, you have to first know who the ideal person is, right? And I've seen some of the work you've done on this, and it's very impressive. You're very good at helping people dial in, like, who is their ideal client, right? So for an agent, go back, and here's an action step. Go back and look at your transactions for this year and last year, right? You should have an idea about like their demographics, who they are, what kind of hobbies they are. Like, this involves actually doing research, or who you love working with. Like, who is it when you get a lead or referral? What type of person is it that you just like, I can't wait to work with this. This is gonna be very exciting and engaging, right? And then you have to figure out, like, how do you connect with these people? Because if you love working with them, it's a certain type of person, right? So what are the commonalities? What are the overlapping things? Because the reality is after you sell somebody a home, if there's nothing that has common interests or anything, how does somebody stay in touch with you? Right? Like, social media is, I have a pretty busy schedule, right? We have over 1,000 different clients in 26 states and 5 other employees and 5 other coaches. And like, I have a pretty packed calendar, but the social media is, I think, my favorite way of staying in touch with people, because I'm literally going on there and I'm writing speakers. I don't know what happened.
Technical difficulties, you know how it is.
But, I'm literally sitting on there engaging with everyone's comments and posts, and like, I find in 15 minutes, I can get in touch with a lot of different people. You can filter them into lists and really be purposeful in how you do it. So, attracting the right client is a mixture of putting out things that you can actually connect with people, right? So like, if you want a certain demographic of people, you have to put out that kind of content.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned something that I think, as you mentioned, it's an actionable item, but audit yourself. So what does that look like? Going through your social, look at your followers. Who are you following? Who are you engaging back with regularly? Who are these dream customers, right? Who is this dream person that you want to work with? What does that look like? What type of content can you use that will attract that specific client, right? So do we have any questions in the chat before we continue on that we can answer here? I saw, yes, this will be recorded. So if anybody has any questions about that, if you registered for this, you will get an email with the recording after. Are there any questions? what if you deal with older clients? So are you asking specifically, Betsy, if you're dealing with older clients, how do you attract them? And by older, what are you referring to? So are these, empty nesters? Who is your older client? And while we're waiting on, they aren't on social much. Yeah. So Shirag, what do you do with people specifically who aren't on social? I mean, I think there are lots of ways other than social to get in contact with people.
I think, especially for the older generation, I think that they're referring to. I don't really get much into the generations. I always think of people as people, but look, handwritten notes, right? If they're older, they would love to meet someone for a cup of coffee and to have a conversation. Like those things all go really well. Like those are like the face-to-face, hand-to-hand combat, right? So
Right.
the more thoughtful you can be, where the younger generation, you have to write as little words as possible because they probably won't read it at all. The older generation, the more words you put in, the more thoughtful you are, the more they appreciate it, right? So it's like, if you're looking at those people, like what would be valuable for them, right? So ultimately the question is how do you get in front of these people where you're a continuous part of their lives and create experiences that they look forward to every year?
Right. I mean, even phone calls, I think, go a long way these days. People are so quick to send a text. I think taking 5 minutes out of your day and reaching out to someone who could really appreciate that does do a lot. Let's see here. How do you convert more leads to reply or become clients? You send out an email saying every 200 leads, we convert on average 1.2%. So there's a lot to unpack if you're sending out emails and they're not converting in the way you'd like. We're looking at a couple of things. One could be your wording, right? Another could be how often your flows are going out. These questions, we actually have a training in the upcoming months regarding email flows and what keywords, sync your content best and get people to engage. But if this is something you're struggling with, I'd say book a strategy session and see what type of email flows we can help you with, because this is a more personalized question on a case-by-case basis. Do you have anything to add there, Shirag?
No, it goes down to the messaging, right? Like think about the WIFM, right? What's in it for me? And
Right.
I think people all have gaps that you're trying to fill on anything. And the more value you could add, the more likely they are to work with you. And just keep in mind as you're emailing people, there's more information available for free through social media and the internet than there ever was in the history of real estate.
Right.
So if you're doing lead conversion, it's more the interpretation of the data versus giving the data.
Exactly. Yeah. So for you, how do you obviously, I think if you, let's say, hosted a lunch, you build relationships, right? So you're reaching out to these people. They know you're going to be there. They're excited to see you, right? Because you've built these relationships. There's a question in the chat regarding, okay, so client appreciation events. How do you get people to show up? You offer lunch, but then people don't take you up on it. To me, this is a awareness thing, and this is also a contact thing, right? What would you do differently if you weren't getting the results you wanted from, let's say, a luncheon?
Well, there are a lot of factors, right? The first factor is like, how are you inviting these people? Right. So how much of a curated approach it is. So like we talk about events all the time. So, touch point one, handwritten note, nice envelope, nice calligraphy pen to really do it with a stamp. Then that opens up. Then they get an email. Then there's an RSVP date. Then there's a reminder email. Then there's a phone call that goes out, right? There's a lot of different things. Think about it. All of you guys have been at real estate companies. At some point, some of you were recruited, or at some point, everyone's been courted for something in their life, right? Like even if you walk by a mall, those people try to convince you to use all those fragrances. Like, hey, come over here. You look beautiful. Like try this out. Like it's something everyone likes to feel wanted, right? And I think the biggest part of a client appreciation event is creating that feeling for people, right? It's like, I really would love to see you. And look, you have to think about this is like being thoughtful in the connections and asking, but also think about it as like a sales situation, right? Like you're actually marketing to these people to come somewhere. Like, why should they want to come? Like everyone could buy their own lunch, right? It's like sometimes just taking like a spin to something that everyone's already done, right? Like George Foreman just took a grill and slanted it and called it the Foreman grill and let the fat goes down and it became genius, right? So he made one small tweak. So what can make your lunch more valuable?
Right. And part of that means, like you're saying, feeling wanted. That could be the thing, right? Because I can easily, like you said, go out and have lunch by myself. But in order to go to this event, I'm going to have to, pick the time, make sure I can attend, go maybe somewhere that's less convenient. So what am I getting out of that? Right. And this again comes back to your three pillars. I think all of these points will come back to your three pillars. Do you mind touching on that again? Because we kind of skimmed over that earlier.
Yeah, well, I'll do two things. One, I want to touch upon that. And two, I want to explain, as valuable as I am, I want to explain the person that I'm doing the course with and kind of what he'll help these people create as well.
Right.
When you're creating content, right, you think about, what do you want somebody to think, right? Like, when everyone runs an ad, there's something they want you to think about, right? Like, if you remember those MasterCard ads, the priceless ads, it's like, everything in life you could buy with a MasterCard, but some things are like, people still remember those ads, right? So if you deconstruct that ad, it's like, what they want you to think? They wanted you to think everything in life you could buy with their credit card, but some things in life are priceless, right? The emotion in that ad was like, wow, like I want to go connect with people that I love, like right now. Like, is it, you show the kid in the baseball game, the hot dog, and all those different things, right? Mind you, this ad's like 25 years old, and I still remember it's like yesterday, right? You see the guy walking in, he sits down at the chair, they show the soft drink, they show the hot dog and all stuff, like, time spent with your son, priceless, right? So if you keep going in this direction, you realize that that's what they're trying to communicate. It's a very much think, feel, do.
Right. And you're mentioning, experience here, right? So it's not just about, a event. It's about the experience. It's about the thing that you're doing with someone, right? We've got some interesting questions in the chat regarding marketing allocation and determining your marketing mix. You've done a really good job about making sure that you're on social media, you're on basically all of the channels, you're engaging regularly, people know about your life, right? So this is really important. You're not just posting, oh, here's my course, right? I also get to know a little bit about your family, about your extracurriculars, what you do in your free time. So that's part of your marketing mix. As far as marketing budget, this is really, I think, customized per person. Each business has different needs. So if you're looking specifically for how much money should I be spending on X channel a month? I'd recommend you book a strategy session with LP, and we can go into that a little bit further. But as far as your marketing mix and building a brand, Shirag's course is great for that. So, but for yourself, Shirag, I mean, you've done a really great job about making people feel like they know you without having ever met you. What do you think is important when it comes to what you share on social, and people are asking here, like, which social is important? Is it Instagram? Is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn?
It's the one that you'll actually do.
Right.
You can't be everything to everyone. And here's something funny. Mark Thompson's keeping track of how many times I use the word right versus the time you use the word right. So I think he might turn this into a drinking game later. So if you think about this, it's like, what do you use? People overcomplicate everything, right? So there's in lending, there's a thing called overlays. So most loans get sold to Fannie and Freddie Mac. And those are the guidelines based on selling a loan. Well, larger boxed institutions put on overlays, additional conditions on top of what's required. And I think agents and people do that in all areas of their life. Well, if I'm not doing anything now, but I need a Facebook strategy, a TikTok strategy, an Instagram, and they make it so complicated. Just get started, go from 0 to 1, right, and figure out what you feel comfortable doing, right? Like something that's not going to make you cringe. And there's a difference between like making excuses and like working through that, or truly being uncomfortable, right? Like there could be personal reasons where you don't want to share anything about your life, not show a single picture of your kids. And I 100% respect that. But there's also like that fear of what are people going to think and everything else. And it's like I tell these people, you go to open houses, you talk to people, you go on broker tours, you meet people, like people know who you are already. It's just that you feel uncomfortable doing it. Everyone is self-conscious. Like, I don't think there's a person that's not. There's some people that watch their videos 100 times to critique everything before they post them. Or personally, I don't watch them at all. I give them to my team. I refuse to watch any video I do. I don't really care. I ask them, is it valuable to somebody else? If they say yes, we'll do it. If not, then we'll change it.
Mhm.
right? But that's how I've become okay with doing this stuff, because it's more about just getting it out there. Because the more you focus on yourself, the less it becomes about another person, the less valuable the content is.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. This isn't about you as much as it may seem like it should be. I think the point here is to get started, you have to just start, like you're saying. So, the thing we run into a lot is people say, oh, I have to curate this. It has to be perfect. It has to look super polished. The thing that works really well is people like humans, actual human connection, real people, right? So it doesn't have to be this massively polished video to get engagement and add value. I think that's the pitfall that people fall into so often. They're like, oh, I need the lights and the sound and this and that before I can start. That's not true, right?
No, and the funny thing is like, if you're in this industry a long time, remember those people have like these pictures in front of the car, number one realtor in the market, like no one likes that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
People like authenticity and realness, because everyone's a person. And if you go back those last couple of years through the pandemic and everything, people have seen it all through Zoom, and animals and cats and dogs and people and kids, and things breaking, people not knowing cameras are on, right? There's such an aspect of being a person. Nobody's perfect, and everyone, regardless of how successful they are in their professional life, still lives an actual life outside of that that's filled with challenges. So like being able to connect through adversity is something that's really important. Being able to share your vulnerabilities is something that's really important, right? I would share, oftentimes what it felt like doing this, being 60 pounds heavier, and how uncomfortable I was, but I still had to get up and do it. Right. And like, I always say, for a social media post, if you could connect with and inspire one person as something you shared, it's a win.
Right. Being real, I think that's something now that people almost have a bad taste in their mouth with social. It's like, oh, it's so fake. And if you can be that one person who's real and authentic, you're going to make genuine connections. The followers you end up getting are going to be people who are actually interested in you and want to work with you. You mentioned something here kind of about just getting started. I know an excuse that is used often is, well, I don't have time. We talk about waking up early and going to the gym and making time, right? But if you need to get started, you say that you can spend less than 30 minutes a week creating content. What does that look like?
Well, here's the first thing you all should do. You should all go to the settings in your iPhone where this little search thing is, and type in screen time. So for every person that says they don't have time, screen time is actually a time management system on your phone, because it'll tell you how much time you spend on there every day, what you spend the most time on there, how many times you pick up your phone, and what you first use. So if you need an extra hour, just go on the screen time and figure out where you need to cut time out. Like, it's
Right.
literally there, right? And look, I think the easiest way to create content is through stories and sharing your day. Right. It's like really simple. Even if you just want to do one post a week and you just want to share some stuff during stories, you guys are all out every day doing all kinds of interesting stuff, being in houses, just don't turn around and take your phone. Like, we're in the kitchen. Like, no shit, you're in the kitchen, right? Like they see the stove, they see the fridge, and they see everything else.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
John's question, I want to actually answer this question for them. Like, how do you determine the marketing mix in your budget? Well, here's the simplest way to do it. Here's like an actual exercise. Go back and look at all your transactions for the last 18 months. And you could break them down into categories. Out of that category, you want to see what percent of your GCI is based on each lead source. And that's how you could tell how much time, money, and energy to allocate to each bucket that you're actually getting business out of. So like we've done this with hundreds of people, and what we'll find, Kennedy, is that, oh, wow, Zillow makes up 75% of my business. So you're going to spend all your focus on it, but really only makes 20% of your GCI up. So you have to start figuring out where the gap is. And then when you could really figure out what's really driving the needle in your business, from there, that's how you really build out a comprehensive budget for where you spend money.
So if somebody is starting there and let's say they've figured out where to spend the money, what do they do next? What is most important? Let's say, okay, I know where to put money. Do I produce content? Is that what's most important? Should I reach out to people? what should I prioritize when trying to scale business and get real leads?
I think about people's decision-making matrices, right? Like people have all these different things that factor into a decision, right? So one, obviously it all starts with human interaction, right? Face-to-face stuff. Everyone should produce content, right? Like I have a client that I work with who's like a health and fitness performance coach. And he started making reels. He's been doing them for a while. And I remember on August 12th, he sent me an email or text, excuse me, that said, I'm about to hit 40,000 people. 2 weeks later, he had 150,000 people on his page. This is 110,000 real people. His forms, his leads are more leads than he knows what to do with, but it takes time, right? And, if all of your GCI, like Judy says, is from referrals, well, there are different areas of where these referrals come from. They're subsets to all data. And the important thing about data is how you use it to make decisions. Right? Like referrals is a broad base. Is it agent referrals, past client referrals, friends and family referrals, vendor referrals? There's a whole different category of this stuff. But this is where it all goes back to brand, right? It's like your brand and who you are is a way for people to engage with you outside of what you do. Your brand is who you are. How you make money is by selling real estate, right? So if people will care about who you are before they care about what you do.
Yeah. And, this is something we talked about at our last session too, but something Chirag's great at is super fans. So super fans are people who don't really care about what you're selling. They care about you, right? So you've built up such a solid brand and a reputation as to who you are that they just want to work with you. They like who you are. That's what you want, right? At the end of the day, you're trying to build super fans. You're trying to build people who actually want to be there for you, right?
Yeah, well, like really building super fans, it's really interesting is like 2 years ago, our business didn't exist, right? So I always say, like, if you're going to align yourself with anyone that talks about doing something, the first thing you want to do is like, look at what they did for themselves. You would not go to the gym and hire an out of shape trainer, right? You wouldn't hire a nutritionalist that didn't look like they're in good shape. So it's like, what we learned in doing this is we're like 27 months in and we've never spent any money on marketing. Right. What we've really obsessed about is the people. Like Dee Dee's one of our clients, and she'll tell you, like, we genuinely care and we care about one thing, that you use the information that you pay for. Right. And then I'm always telling people, like, it's about creating a life that your business fits into versus a business that your life fits into. Right. And that's our brand. Like, that's our message. It's very clear. Right. So what is your message? Like, what do you believe in? What do you stand for? What do you enjoy? Who are you as a person? What brings you joy? How do you like supporting others? Like, all of those things put together is it, right? So Brandon, if you believe in RE/MAX, you should be sharing about what makes that brand great for you, right? How does it connect with you and make your life better? How does it make your business better? How are you filled with a great community of business partners and realtors, right? Like, there's interesting stuff on this that you can share very easily. But the first part is you just have to put thought into it, right? Like, there actually has to be a strategy and a plan. So it's like, when we think about this, I think about it in 3 ways. And I partnered with a large entrepreneur, restaurateur turned entrepreneur. And Brian Mazza has built this brand where I was talking to him earlier and we're talking about our course and everything. He says, you want to know something crazy? He goes, I might be in really good shape and I like running as a hobby. Right. He goes, I'm going to get paid over $100,000 this year to run races. I'm not even a professional runner. And I said, well, why is that? Because part of my brand is fitness, right? So all of us are brands. So it's like part 1 of our course really is, how do we identify our brand pillars, right? Like, if I look at Brian, his is food, fashion, family, and fitness, right? And everything goes into those pillars. Now, the second part of it is like, all right, Kennedy, we've identified your brand pillars. Now what do I do? And this is where everyone gets stuck. First part is, the first month is like really understanding that, workshopping it, workbooking it, and be like, okay, these are my core pillars. Then the next part about is content, right? Like, we brought in actual, like, his videographer or photographer to explain to people, like, when you go meet a lifestyle photographer, how do you plan content? How do you create shot lists? How do you give someone something? Because we're going to make it for the people, that someone can understand who your brand is and what you want them to do. So the second part is all about how to create content, sample content guides of what you can really do, whether it's an iPhone or it's working with a professional. And the third part really is like the sauce is like, how do you implement this? How do you build out a monthly marketing calendar, right? How do you really plan and take what you've done in part one, part two, and implement it into your business so it shows up? What are the roadblockers? Where do people overthink the process, right? How do I implement this so it actually works for the right clients at the right time in the right place to get the result you look for? And those are the three parts of our program. And when you start looking at these people who are brand deals with like Maserati and Tonal and large places like Saks and American Express and Nike and 10,000, this is all just one human being sharing what they love most about their lives, and deconstructing that type of stuff and knowledge that he's had with working with the top brands and continuing to attract them is what we want to share with everyone else. I have experience doing this in real estate industry specific, building courses, coaching, mentoring. Brian has best in class knowledge about how to build a brand from nothing, because him and I played Little League baseball together as kids, and his dad was a school teacher, right? So like either one of us grew up in some uber affluent family where we were introduced to all these people. We had to build this stuff from 0 to 1. So it's like really the way that you collapse time is you take other people's learnings and you just make them your own. And that's our job as coaches and trainers. And it's what you do really well every day is help take people's ideas, concepts, and give them a roadmap to make it their own and ultimately bring it to life.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have a lot of great points here. Something that I'd love for you to touch on a little bit more, you mentioned it earlier, was what type of content is good content? So we have a question in the chat here, and it's, wait, do I show that kitchen? Like, oh, check out the kitchen. No, right? So what you're mentioning the 3 pillars and that things should feed back into this, right? Whatever your 3 pillars are. But could you just break down again for everyone here, what type of content is good content? Like, should I spend time on post editing and recording, or does it matter just to see your face? What is important here?
It's such a loaded question because it's what you want, right? Personally speaking, I'm a big stories guy, right? I like sharing my morning routine. I like sharing my workouts, like sharing, I don't necessarily always talk about my clients and the results and stuff. Like that's just not, I don't know, it's just not who I am as a person. So it's not something I often do. And people are like, why don't you share more about what you do professionally? I'm like, it's there, right? But like, look, people think about experiences. So if you're selling something, what kind of experience can another person have? Right. So if you have a house with an open, awesome kitchen, outdoor concept, like built-in grill and pool and everything like that, you sell them an experience, right? Imagine sitting here on a warm summer afternoon with the in-room music playing, with your kids outside at the pool, friends over for a barbecue. Like if you close your eyes and that's a place you want to be, then I suggest you come to 123 Main Street. Right. And check it out and see if this place is right for you to call home. Like this, I just made that up. That's better than like, all right, guys, we're here in the kitchen. And if you look outside here, we'll open the door. There are patios. There's a grill here. And look, there's a pool. You could like, you got to sell people an experience, right? Like, why should they care?
That's really storytelling. It's storytelling, and you're great at that. I think something that you want to avoid is I can do a self-guided tour and walk through a house and determine that that's a kitchen and that's a patio, right? What value are you bringing that's unique to you? Like, you're building a dream, right? At least for your clients, and that's what it should be. There's a couple of good questions in the chat. We have a little over 10 minutes left. I'd love to pull a couple people in to have more of a dialogue. Is there any specific topic that you'd like to dive into deeper, Chirag, or should we kind of go to the chat first?
No, Q&A is my favorite part.
Okay, cool. So if anyone would like to come on screen and chat with us, we would love that. Start answering any questions you may have with the remaining 10 minutes we have left here. Okay, Brandon, I'm going to pull you on. Give me one moment. Okay, so some people will start kind of flipping over onto the chat here. Let's see. Brandon. You should be able to turn your video on and chat with us. Hey, welcome to the chat.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, how are you?
Good, good.
And I'm going to pull you on too. What question do you have while I start pulling others on? Feel free.
Yeah, so my number one question is really for the experience of Remax, like being able to give the experience of like an above the crowd and content. How would you actually go about doing that in kind of the most effective, efficient way you can think of?
You say above the cloud.
And above the crowd.
What does that mean?
It's really a kind of a Remax, an old Remax term that is basically providing like exceptional services, sort of like when you're flying in a Remax balloon, it's like above the clouds, and then it's a play on words above the crowd, basically.
Well, it's like anywhere you go, right? Just give more value than your competitors do. Like what people pay for, maybe you want to give away for free, right? Like
Yeah.
the more you can, I call it the ownership experience, right? It's like the more you can give an idea to somebody of what exactly like working with you, what the benefits are, where I'd call Kenny up, like, oh my God, I had the most amazing conversation with Brandon. All these great things are going to happen before they ever did. That's how you create something valuable, right? So it's like, what would someone want to share? What could help their lives, right? So that's what I would think about in creating above the cloud value is create stuff literally so good that people normally would have to pay for it.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, it's challenging to think of like creative ideas sometimes, because it's like obviously to go to that next level, it requires like a really intense amount of hard work, I find.
And that's why most people don't do it. They don't take the strategy aspect of doing it, right? And listen,
Yeah.
the easiest way to figure out what people want is just ask them questions, right? Go ahead and ask people like, what would be, the question I like is what would be most valuable for you that you have a hard time looking for on the internet or it takes a lot of time for you to do?
Totally, yeah.
So I hope we answered your question.
Yeah.
Kane, I don't know if I'm saying your name right. Would you like to jump in here?
Yeah, so I got a two-part question. And by the way, thank you so much for sharing all the valuable information for all of us here. So the first question is I want to do more video content, but I'm having trouble kind of planning or knowing what videos to make. And I think with that, it's preventing me to take action on it. So I'm procrastinating on it. Is there any suggestions on how we'd be able to kind of know what contents to make or what would be valuable to the audience?
Well, I would think about FAQs and SAQs, right? FAQs stand for frequently asked questions. What do people ask you the most? And then SAQs are my favorite. It's a great way to write content. It's called should ask questions, right? So if you think about this, what agents or buyers should be asking is, well, if I don't make an offer on this house today and the rate goes up by 1/8 of a point, what will happen to the amount that I can offer? Right. So if you think about the should ask questions, that makes great content because it's more of an inference based approach than just a general observation.
Okay, cool. I guess just making a bunch of questions and then getting started on that and answering it for people. Okay, the second question is that are you familiar with how to make shit? Hold on. Sorry, let me turn off this virtual background. Are you familiar with how to make like this kind of caption in a quick way?
There's a couple ways you can do that. Is that Instagram?
That's on Instagram, yeah.
Yeah, so that's Ryan Serhant, right? Yeah. So
he has a big team behind him, but I was just wondering if there's a way we can do it in a cost-effective way.
Yeah, so Instagram actually allows you to put captions on screen on their reels. So it's an in-app feature at the top of your screen. After you film something, you have the ability to add captions to your video. I can sync with you after or while we get another question going, I can pull up and just show you real quick. So if you were to make a reel, you swiped up, you pulled some video, and then if there was, so this is on your reel, right? And let's say you had coffee in here. When you click, well, if you click add, one second, next. Okay, so once you click add and next, you have all these options at the top of your screen here. On here, there's an option if there was somebody talking, to add basically closed captions.
Okay.
So that'll add them to your video. You can then save and download that file, and it does it for you.
Okay, I'll give that a try.
Yeah, so that's a quick and easy way to do that.
Sweet, thank you.
Yeah. John, do you have any questions? And if there's anyone else who wants to jump on, let us know.
Yes. So I've been an agent for, I think it'll be 2 years in October. And I've spent a ton of money on different lead sources, realtor.com, Zillow, magazines, all types of things you can spend money on. And then when I examine what I've closed, there's no pattern that I can go back and leverage to duplicate or determine where I'm going to allocate future spend to. So I'm going through a rebrand process now, just trying to figure out where should I be investing my time and energy and towards, really just trying to scale to the next level.
Well, I would look at where your transactions actually come from.
Yeah, and they've been all over the place. Like there's no pattern. There's, a friend of a friend here. I spent maybe $3,000 at realtor.com and closed one deal, so I kind of broke even there. Complete stranger off of Facebook Messenger. Don't know where it came from. And I don't know if other agents are experiencing that. There's really not a pattern that I can go back and say, this is where John should spend all of his time at.
Well, really, this is, it's gonna be very hard to answer this question in 4 minutes.
Gotcha.
Because there are a lot of different factors of where do you live, how long you live there, who do you know, what's in your database, if all these things are around, where do you spend your time, what's your time blocks, how do you market, what are your email newsletters, what does your social say? I'm like trying to talk fast now to try to get to all of these different things, John, play into what goes into what you do. It's unfortunately, it's not like this is a real like business strategy, right? It's not so much as something that I wish I could tell you it's like X and O equals Y, right? But this is not the case because it's very personalized to each person.
Yeah, I just dropped again the links to Chirag's course. So if you're looking for more branding and to learn more about this in more detail, that's a great course. And then if you're looking for more of an overall strategy, website, all of that, feel free to join, book a session for a free chat with LP. Lana, I apologize.
Lana.
Okay.
Yes, my question is, well, I've been a real estate agent for 7 years. I moved from Michigan, so I had my branding, everything set up, my pillars for my lead gen, but then we couldn't refuse an offer that my husband got, and I moved to Arizona. Now I'm trying to rebrand myself. I did work with a lot of luxury, and the area we moved in, the median price of homes starts at $950K. So what is the best way to kind of, it would be very helpful to know how should I rebrand myself again as luxury agent? I'm having a very hard time doing that here, especially when there's a lot of competition.
Well, I think too, like a brand is like, what do you see? What do you touch? What do you feel? How it's communicated, the words are used, right? Like if you think about like Chanel, Louis Vuitton, like Mercedes, Gucci, they're very short, direct, concise, to the point. They're minimalist in the way that they show things. They use certain types of fonts like that. That's the aesthetic of it. And then like, if you think about luxury, it's all about curated experiences, right? So how are you putting those two together where somebody looks at what you have, sees what you have at social and realizes aesthetically it feels luxury. And then the way that you communicate that out with the world is what you do, that it really is a luxury experience.
Okay, so would that be like with my Google, with my website? Because I know my website with LP, I asked for it to be all about luxury homes, like not the kitchen, not the bedroom, not just some, backyard or anything like that, but as in the whole property, like luxury property and the mountain views that we have, for example, the valley view type of thing. And I just wanted to make it very modern, so it's all about me being modern. I do have a couple of clients here that actually started to kind of advertise me because of my knowledge. I used to be an attorney, and then I'm very good with negotiation, my contract, but again, it's just I want to get my brand out there so people kind of recognize me, my name.
Right. So I think this is kind of a bigger question, right? You're looking at your overall branding, not just your website, it's your social, it's how you're engaging with your clients. So I do want to mention that for those who know it's at time, thank you so much for joining. The links in the chat are here if you would like to join Chirag's course, or if you have any questions and want to book a strategy session, they're on the call here. But basically, I think you kind of have multiple parts to this question. Chirag can probably chime in here, but your luxury presence, it's not just about saying, oh, I'm luxury, right? It's about how you engage with that market. So I think this is kind of a bigger long form approach of your overall strategy. Wouldn't you say, Chirag?
Yeah, it's, this is one of the things that you really want to put thought into, because people are going to have to see you. Think about how many times you have to see something for it to resonate with you. So if I want someone to know me for something, what am I doing to be known? Like, it's a seen and be seen business. Where are people seeing with my brand? Where are people seeing my brand? How are people engaging with my brand? All of these different things play into it, right? So everyone wants this result. But really the question is how aligned is your plan on getting there? And so if you want to build this mega luxury, well-known brand, look at the time blocks in your calendar and see if the two of them align.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your question. I know we're at time here. So I did see that Dee Dee asked this question multiple times. So Chirag, she's attended
She's a client of ours, so I can ping her.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Just send me an email. I'll answer your question.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for attending. There will be a recording sent out for those who registered like last time. This is a event that happens twice a month. So look out for an upcoming invite to the next live event. And again, if you have any questions or would like to join Chirag's course, there's a link in the chat here. I do think that it would be super beneficial for those of you who are looking to grow your brand. And then if you would like more information on your overall strategy or website, social, feel free to drop a link for a book session with one of our team members, and we'll be happy to chat with you. Chirag, is there anything else to add?
No, listen, thank you for having me. I hope everyone could share themselves more authentically with passion and purpose. And look, just love who you are, share it with the world. And I believe the right people will connect with you based on it.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day. Chirag,
Laura says she can't get the links in the chat.
Who said what? Sorry.
Laura said that she can't get the links in the chat.
Sure. Laura, I'll make sure I can get them to you. Everyone else, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining. And Chirag, thank you again.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.